Today's episode of Roadie Free Radio is sponsored in part by AirTurn, manufacturers of mobile mounting hardware and wireless app controllers. AirTurn offers tools for seamlessly executing your performance the way you want. Check out airturn.com and use the code Roadie for exclusive deals.
What's up, Roadies? This is Michael Musburger.
This is Erica Russ.
What's happening, Roadies? This is Jeff Cardoni, and you're listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, Roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. All right, what's happening, Roadies? Welcome back to another episode. This one happens to be 159. You are listening to Roadie Free Radio. This is your host, Larry Milburn. I'm coming at you from a barn in Northwest Connecticut. Man, it is good to have you all here. Our guest this week is an old buddy of mine, Mr. Jeff Cardoni, film and television composer of such amazing shows. Just in the last, year, he has wrapped up Silicon Valley. He's in the middle of the Kominsky method. I know a lot of you out there love that show as well, plus many, many more. I was super fortunate to grab this interview while I was in Los Angeles for the NAMM show back in January. And we're going to get to that in just 1 minute. But first, we've had some passings in the Roadie family these last 10 days or so, or maybe more. So I just want to give a shout out to the extended Roadie family out there, with much love and blessings to Brian Hendry, Ivan Call, Ronnie Drayton, John Nugent, and Steve Judas. Much love and blessings to your families and to your friends. You've all gone way too soon. Want to thank you all for your support, for your listenership for last week's episode, where I had Ryan Phillip George as well as Dr. Chaim Newman on the show, telling us about their new project, the Tor Health Research Initiative. If you've not listened to the episode, please head back. It's episode 158. Very important stuff, very cool stuff that these guys are doing for the community. They have a survey that they would like you to take if you are a touring professional, whether you are a musician, an artist, or a crew member of any kind, or a band manager, whatever it is. If you are in the industry and you are a touring pro, head over to tourhealth.org. That's tourhealth.org. Take the survey. It will take you maybe an hour. It's like 265 multiple choice questions. They are really trying to dig deep into the mind and the life of a touring pro, what goes on out there, and how we as a community can best help serve each other out there on the road as well as off the road. So head over to tourhealth.org, take the survey. Do not forget, the film Roadie My Documentary by TJ Hoffman is out. Head over to roadiemydocumentary.com, hit the link and download the film, purchase the film, support the man who has poured many, many years of his life into bringing a really cool, insightful documentary about the world of roadies to the screen for you. Don't have too much else this week. It's been a pretty good week. Things are trucking along. And, you know what I did want to do? I did want to address one thing. One thing that has come, and I can't believe it's taken me this long, but I've been a little jammed up about it. The Black Crowes reunion. As many of you know, I'm a huge Black Crowes fan. Huge Black Crowes fan. Magpie Salute fan. Fan of the brothers Robinson. And and I don't know. I can't bring myself to purchase a ticket for this upcoming run of shows that they're going to do this summer, the reunion tour. Something just doesn't smell right. I don't feel right. I'm really particularly bummed that the second album from the Magpie Salute, High Water 2, these guys, all the band members put their heart and soul into making this record. The fans loved the tunes. The record actually is doing really well. And we don't know if we're going to get to hear these songs ever live or not. And Rich really hasn't done much to promote the album. It just came out and that was about it, and got sort of glossed over by the fact that the brothers Robinson are going to be touring this spring and summer and whatnot for the big reunion tour, the Kiss and Make Up tour. And I don't know, man. It bums me out. I got weird feelings. I got weird juju about the whole thing, So, I don't know. Weigh in. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Send me an email. info@roadiefreeradio.com. We just had Valentine's Day. I hope you all had a wonderful made-up Hallmark holiday, and you celebrated your loved ones all around the globe as they travel to and from venue after venue. Hey guys, you know what? Your support on this show means a lot to me. It really does. And the best way to show that support is to head over to the iTunes store, leave me a review for Roadie Free Radio, leave a comment, leave a real genuine comment. Whatever you got to say about the show, I want to hear it. And it helps us in the Apple Podcast Store move on up the rankings. So I also want to let you guys know we are sponsored today by Boulevard Carol Entertainment right here in New York City, also with offices in DC and New Jersey. However, the New York facility has well over 17,500 square feet of rehearsal facilities, production offices, backline gear, you name it, they've got it. They've got the gear to help you get on the road. If you're an artist and you are looking for a spot to land in New York, do a rehearsal, hole up for a week or two, they are the folks to call. Anthony and his people do a phenomenal job of keeping the place running smoothly and professionally. If you're a touring pro and you're looking for a great group of people to hook up with that work hard, that are loyal to their workers, look no further than boulevardcarol.com. All right, so as I said, today's guest is Mr. Jeff Cardoni, film and television composer, happens to be an old buddy of mine from my LA days. Great guy. I met him through a bunch of other friends. I think that we end up talking about in this interview. I was fortunate enough to grab this interview, like I said, while I was in LA for the NAMM show. Check out his new home studio. Super cool. I was very excited to sit down with Jeff and just reminisce about his time and how he's come up. I was kind of there with him at the very beginning as he was segueing from being in a band, being in a touring band, a signed band, and then that not quite working out, and he was trying to find his next path. And what's cool about this is that, you think you know people pretty well. And the truth of it is, if you sit down and you talk, you find out a lot of amazing things about them that you just didn't really know about them. And Jeff has certainly had his struggles along the way, particularly when he was getting started, getting his foothold in the industry as a film and television composer. As I mentioned at the top of the show, he is currently working on the Kominsky method. He just wrapped up 6 years, I think it was, of Silicon Valley. He's worked on LA's Finest, Paradise Cove, Training Day, American Pie, and many, many more titles, including the most amazing short film ever produced about roadies called Roadie. See what I did there? He actually did the film score for my short film, Roadie, that set me on my path many, many moons ago to be doing this podcast. Anyway, it just goes to show, as you will find out listening to his interview here, sometimes if you really want something, you got to hang in there a little bit longer than you think and bet on yourself, because you just never know when the breaks are going to come your way. Speaking of breaks, let's give a break to my man, Mr. Chris Wilson over at Show Pro Beard Co. The guy has created his very own unique formula of beard balm that not only performs well in terms of health and nourishment, my friends, it also provides the control, shine, and pleasant aroma that any bearded professional would appreciate. Right? You're on the road. You don't have time to always get a shower, brush your hair, do your thing. And you got a big old unruly beard. Well, grab yourself a can of Show Pro Beard Co. Wipe it right on there. Get it in. Work it in those nooks and crannies of your beard. These are all natural balms that will leave your beard soft, smooth, and nourished. Choose from a variety of natural smelling scents like Home Sweet Home, Morning Wood, Through the Woods, Chain Motor Oil, and of course they have original unscented. If you use the code Roadie over there, you get 20% off your entire order. That is Roadie over at Show Pro Beard Co. Get yourself 20% off your entire order. All right, I want to jump into this episode. Let's do it. Here we go. Thank you guys for listening. We got some good stuff coming up over the next couple of weeks, but for now, here we go with Mr. Jeff Cardoni.
Hit it. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
And it's cool to be in your new spot. We were just talking a little bit before. I've been in now 3 of your spots.
Yes.
Starting with a bungalow in the Hollywood Hills. Not in Hollywood Hills. It was in the flats somewhere.
Yeah, it was
right?
down in West Hollywood. Yeah.
Right, West Hollywood,
Fairfax,
up north of me a little bit.
Yep.
Doing you engineer produced my first produced by credit,
That's
which was
right.
a meditation. It wasn't nothing cool about it. It was a meditation CD that I was doing. Sitting on your bed with the woman who was reading or doing her thing and running cable around this courtyard into your other room.
I remember that place because it was 500 square feet. The house.
Yes.
And there was that little courtyard in the middle, and every time I'd be, because I had the studio in the one room, but it wasn't soundproof because I was too broke to soundproof. And like you'd finish playing something and people would scream, like neighbors in the building next door would be like, shut up. So, yeah. I have fond memories of it. Plus it was haunted.
Whoa, I didn't know that
that's
part.
A whole other story. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Any good haunted stories?
Yeah, well there'd be almost every day you'd hear this just like slamming on the roof. And at first I thought it was like a squirrel or something, but it was really, it sounded like a body was up there.
Wow.
And so if you remember that bedroom, like the roof was like super small. So like then I'd start like, you'd hear the sound, you'd like jump up to try to see and there's nothing there. Wow. And so my crazy ex-wife did some research and we found out that the person who used to live in this house was like a Shakespearean actor. And this is creepy, but so my son at the time used to always say he'd see his friend Coco Baines. And we're like, what the hell is Coco Baines? He'd be like, yeah, last night I saw Coco Baines has red eyes and he was in the room. And so the person who lived there, we found out their name was Coco Baines.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my
me
God.
Out.
Yeah, man.
Because it's the smallest house, so it's like the most non-scary place. But like there'd be times I'd be in the kitchen and you would just like walk 2 feet and it would get like super cold, or like all the hairs on the back of your neck would stand up, and
whoa,
you'd walk through. It felt like someone was smoking,
right? And
then you'd walk a foot away and it was gone. Like it was really creepy.
Whoa.
But then so we got out of that
I
place.
do remember when we recorded that meditation thing that there was something, I don't know if it was noisy or something, but I remember we had to take a lot of breaks.
Right.
I do remember that.
I don't know
Maybe
if
it
that
was
was
the roof thing. I don't know. But I remember there was a sound thing or something in there.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, and we were like outside. But so that place was creepy. Yeah.
So now that we fast forward from the fact that you do know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You've just rolled off of a great year and a great run with Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Bittersweet, I imagine.
Very much so. Yeah. It didn't really set in, like, and then when it ended, I was, like a week later, I was like, oh man, it's over.
Yeah.
'Cause that was like, it's nice to have like a steady thing in this business because they're so rare, you know what I mean? But it was just very emotional to have it end.
Yeah, I saw your post.
Oh, yeah.
You did a post about it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's, I know from Nate Barr, who we just talked about, but Transcenders.
Yeah.
Those guys, right?
My boys, yeah.
Yeah.
I just texted them earlier. It's Mike's birthday today. So
that's right. It is Mike's birthday.
Yeah.
That's so weird. Did I know that you guys? I must have known you guys knew each other.
I met them through the Houlihan brothers. Yeah, but we do the same thing, and we're tight. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that weird? I'm going to digress for a second. Is it? Yeah, you're like, yeah, it is. Is it weird because, like, obviously your friends, the community of composers out here is close.
But we're all like competing with each other all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to feel that way. Yeah, like when I was like the first few years I did it, I didn't hang out with any other composers because we're all jealous of each other. We're all trying to like, get a gig from each other. But then I kind of realized that like, if Mike and the boys are going to get a gig. That it doesn't mean I was going to get that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like all kind of have our own paths, and things come to all of us differently.
It's
and
not too dissimilar probably than the acting gig, right? And that like, well, they wanted to go this direction and not that direction. They like that flavor more than this.
Yeah. And it's just, I just realized it's just wasted energy, like just worrying about what someone else is doing, because it doesn't affect. It's not what someone else has success or not. Yeah, it's not really it doesn't have anything to do with me. It's not like I was going to get that success if someone didn't get. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I kind of just learned it's better. It just feels better as a human to like embrace other people's success.
Right. So when did you hit this? Like 6 months ago, you had this realization?
No. Honestly, a lot longer, because now most of the people I hang out with are composers, and because it's like we all can relate to the lives we live, because it's a weird life, you know what I mean? And you spend a lot of time staring at a blank thing by yourself, so we can understand each other. So I kind of realized that it's better to just we're all in this
support
together.
Each other
and we all kind of have our moment to get some victories. And
so speaking of sitting in the dark room in Silicon Valley and stuff like that, I know from talking to those guys, Nate and from Mike and everything, right? Like you're in the grind of doing this. I mean, even when you and I were texting to set this up, it's like, I got a deadline. I'm working against a thing, right? So you're just in here, you're cranking away episode.
Yeah.
Your little babies are going out there.
Yeah.
And then, yes, it ends. One of them ends.
Yep.
And I can see it would be very emotional, because you're also, particularly on a show that had a run, that was...
Yeah, we had
5 years, 6 years,
6 seasons, right?
Something like that. You're especially if you're on it the whole time, you're watching these guys or gals, whatever it is, like go through their thing.
It feels like a family. Yeah, it feels like people and and just, I mean, Silicon Valley especially, because that one kind of came out of nowhere. Like I didn't know when I first got this, I didn't know it was going to turn out to be like this big thing, Yeah. And it's really weird because like I hadn't really done very much comedy before that.
Right.
And it's weird now, like on the comedy guy, because of that show. Like I never saw that. And the music on that show really wasn't comedic at all. You know, we were doing like all the tension-y and all the emotional stuff.
Yeah. Did you do the main track too?
The theme? No.
The theme? Okay.
No, I wish I did, but no, that's a licensed song.
Okay.
But especially for me, that show in particular, like I was the biggest Beavis and Butthead fan ever. Like I did the best Cornholio imitation. And so when I got in a meeting and you walk in and Mike Judge is sitting there and so I was, he was like big Office Space and Beavis and Butthead were so awesome to me. So so it really was like, I really wanted to nail that thing. And the crazy thing is like, so I got a meeting and I got the job somehow. I got lucky, as anytime we get a job, we get lucky.
Yeah.
But so Mike called a couple days later about something and he left a message. But Mike is the voice of Beavis, so like the voicemail sounds like Beavis is leaving you a message.
Yeah.
And I saved it for a while. Like this is fucking awesome. It's Mike Judge. It's Butthead is leaving me a message, and like, and he was actually here one time because there's one episode. I forget what season. I think it was the second season, but there was a crappy band that played the main title.
Okay.
So Mike was here and he played bass and we played guitar. And so he's actually a really good musician. So
you're jamming out with one of your childhood
and
idols.
when my back's to him and every time he's talking, it sounds like Beavis is talking to you in the room. So it was a trip. So
that is awesome, man. Take us through, if you would, like the process of coming in to meet with somebody, sort of audition something. What does that look like?
It's different every time. You never know. Like you sit around and wonder if the phone is going to ring.
Right. But what are they asking for?
Well, that one. I'm trying to think how that happened. That one, I knew the music supervisors on it, Jason Alexander and Rudy Chung. They have a company called Hit the Ground Running. I had worked with them on CSI Miami for a bunch of years.
Yeah.
So they were doing it, and they reached out and they said they're looking for someone. Would you send a reel? So I wrote a handful of tracks without seeing it. wrote some tracks, and they got it to Mike, and I guess Mike liked enough of them to get a meeting.
Yeah.
And then so you go and you have a meeting.
And what do they tell you, like what the show's going to be about and the tone and stuff like that? And
yeah, well, at that point, no, you just go in and meet, and it's
Okay.
I don't know how these things work, man. Like you go in, and it's so awkward because you know,
Right.
like you're there and you want to say the thing that's going to get you the job, but you don't
Right.
know what to say. And it's like, in my experience, anytime I go into a meeting and I think that I nailed it, I don't get the job. If you think it went shitty, then you somehow get the job. Like I walked out of there because Mike is not the most like lighthearted. He's really intense, you know.
Right,
Like, it's
right.
so funny. Like the funny people are
Yeah.
super intense, so
Oh,
we're not
yeah.
like joking around in that room at all. So it was all business, you know. So it was
Yeah.
like it's tough to kind of break the ice, you know, and,
Yeah.
and get it going. And the other producer is this guy Alec Berg, who I had met before, who's a huge metal fan.
Right.
Yeah, and he does Barry now. But anyway, so it was Mike and Alec. I got a meeting with them, and
Yeah.
you know, we talked about stuff. And I think my pitch to them was, I had seen the pilot, and they sent it to you with no music in because they don't want to like kind
Right.
of tell, you know,
Right. They
want
don't
to
want to flavor
get
your
input. Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And I was just like, at the pilot, I was just like, I just think the music has to be cooler than the guys, you know, because like they're computer dudes and stuff.
Yeah.
So it can't be like dorky music. I'm like, it has to be hipper than they are, you know.
Yeah.
That was my pitch, and somehow that struck a chord, I guess.
So without they obviously hear samples of your work, but they
Yeah.
don't hear like, hey, can you do a few cues so we can hear what your thing for this? And like,
No, for this show, no. Like
Okay.
sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they'll be like, here, we're going to have you demo a few scenes, and that's how we're going to pick people.
right.
But that's, I mean, it could be good or bad, but that's rough when you get to do that, because so much of coming up with what a show is going to be is like the back and forth.
Right.
If someone just sends you something and say, here, put your sound on this.
Right.
That's just like, you know, there's 100 ways you can
Sure.
do something. So it's
Yeah.
like, without the back and forth, that's kind of not a fair task, you
Right,
know? Because
right.
like you're forced with, well, I can do the thing I know that will work for this.
Yeah.
Or do you want to do something a little more out there?
Right.
It might go well, but
Sorry.
the thing out there might not be, it might be too out there for them, you know?
Right.
So it's always like, do you
Right.
play it safe, or do you just go,
Try something
yeah.
wacky.
But so in this case, no, they just liked the music that I sent, and
And just went for it.
then I got the gig.
Do you feel like, and I just want to use, I don't want to harp on Silicon Valley, but
Yeah.
I'd like to use it as a model if
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like in each season you're sort of re-auditioning? Or do you feel like, well, I'm in, this is, you know what I mean?
No.
Or once you sort of paint
Well-
something, it's your color and you're in.
No, you never feel comfortable.
Ever.
No, because I, in fact, on that show, every year they replaced the sound people. They replaced like other key people.
Wow.
So like, there's always that moment, like at the beginning of each season, they're like, "Oh yeah, so and so's not back." So I'm like, "Fuck, am I back?" You know,
Right,
like until
right.
you get the call.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never take it for granted that I'm ever going to be back on anything. But like, once you get back, so like you get hired back at the beginning of each season, and once
Right.
you're on there,
Then you know you get,
well, yeah, I mean,
you set your deal memo
unless you
and
screw
get-
something up,
Right.
You know, but which happens all the time. But
when you've got a show like that's got 6 seasons, whatever, you know, maybe it's 3 seasons, whatever it is. At the beginning of each season, do you go back in, sit down with the creators, and like, what are we trying to do differently this year? Or is it really just sort of like you're staying in your lane?
It's like
doing your thing?
we'll get to each episode. Yeah, I mean the show for that show in particular. In the beginning, there was not much music. You know, there was like little transitional kind of things.
Yeah.
And then like a few episodes in, we'd be sitting there watching it, and Mike's like, "Oh, maybe we should try something there. You know, maybe we should try something here." And then it ended up really changing how it sounded, where we basically scored it like a drama. You know, because there's so much tension in that
Yeah.
ticking clock stuff, and
Right.
all of that didn't have music in the first few episodes. But then once we started that, then he started liking it, and then we started doing that more.
Yeah.
And then so there was more and more of that kind of music, and like the emotional kind of uplifting
Right.
of, you know, when
Yeah.
for their victories. And so, you know, for me, I was like, we should just score it like a movie, you know, like not like a sitcom, because it's on
Right.
HBO and you don't have to do all those little, I mean, granted, there were some of those little get
Yeah.
you from here to there in 5 second kind of things, but those are my
Right.
least favorite things to do.
Right. Why?
Oh, because what can you do in 5 seconds? You know,
Right.
those are the bane of anyone.
Right. It's
Well, 'cause, like,
hard
you-
to get it all across.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's hard to get it across and not sound like TV. And everyone will say, "Don't sound like TV." I'm like, then don't put a cue there. Like, just put no music. It doesn't need it. But
Right. Right.
people, you know, people get not so much on Silicon Valley, but some people get really, especially if a producer is like a writer, they're really in tune with the dialogue and the jokes, and they're so in their head that it's hard for them to step back and look at it as a viewer. And so that everything is like accentuating the words on the page, you know?
Right,
And
right.
I personally don't think a lot of those things need to be accentuated.
Yeah.
So it's a constant struggle. Yeah, which is why I'm not a huge fan of comedy, even though I end up doing a bunch of comedies. You know? Because I'd rather let the jokes play by themselves
Sure.
and not score the comedy.
Right. Right.
So
I always find it fascinating too that like you get something sent to you, there's no music on
Right.
it, and from your brain, I mean, it's no different really than like picking up a guitar and strumming and then
Yeah.
coming up with a riff and a hook and a thing and
Yeah.
a bit of melody line, but it's still like it's got to come out of like some crazy place, you know, to put
you're
something.
just improvising. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just that first nugget. I mean, that's the hardest thing I found of this job, like in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like when I was first starting, is just, you know, having enough confidence to know like what you would do. Like I'm looking at this, I know what I think this should do here. And,
Right.
and not like beating yourself up, like thinking of the perfect thing to do. It's just look at this, react to it, and in 5 seconds, just come up with some nugget of what you're going to do. And then just go with where it takes you.
Right.
Because if you overthink and you second guess, you're dead. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you got 20 other cues you got to do, you know? So
Right.
it's really, and the, you know, the more years I've gotten into this, your first instinct is usually best. The first instinct is that's you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what your take on it. And
Right.
I think that's, you know, when you first start, you know, all these things, you get a movie or a show and it has like, it's called temp music in it. It's
Yeah.
got movie, you know, music from other things
Right.
in there. And in the beginning, you kind of use that as a crutch because you don't know what you would do there, you know?
Right.
Like, so it,
And someone put that in there because they kind of thought like, this might be the vibe I want here, right?
yeah. And in the beginning, you're terrified to veer too far away from that.
Right.
But now I literally just ignore it most of the time,
Huh.
you know? And it's just because I know what I think it should be there.
Right.
You know, I mean, I say that on a lot of TV shows, I can ignore it. On a lot of independent films, if it's like a studio big film, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen on that. It's
Right.
harder to just come
Right.
out of left field on stuff.
Yeah.
But I've done it. But like I think once you get more confidence in who you are, like why are they hiring you as opposed
Yeah.
to someone else? You know, because
Right.
they don't want to hire you to just to give them a photocopy of what's already there. Because
Right.
that's
So what is I was going to say, what's the monkey cage thing? What's the Jeff Cardoni thing?
oh,
What
man,
is your thing? Do you know?
I don't know. My that's an interesting question, but I can't really verbalize it. Like, I mean, I use guitar a lot.
Yeah.
I like things that are really minimal, and I like going for the emotion in the most like minimal way possible.
Yeah.
Like I think my specialty is like the emotional moments.
Okay.
You know, going for the heart without being cheesy.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Which is hard because it's like if you put certain things, it sounds like the Young and the Restless. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Like to be cool and
Strings.
hip, yeah. Like,
Right.
and still get to the heart of it. Those are the scenes I like to do the most.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
As you got more into this
right.
side of things, did you start watching and digesting, a lot more movies and television shows to sort of figure out what people are doing, and like, oh, I think I want to be more of a Danny Elfman than I do a Randy Newman, or that
not
sort of
consciously. I think we're all influenced by what we grew up with.
Yeah.
I grew up with with all the John Williams things and everything. But
Right.
I think for me, the big light bulb moment for composing was Thomas Newman. I used to be a huge fan of all the Bret Easton Ellis books, Lesson Zero and American Psycho and stuff.
Yeah.
So they did a movie of Lesson Zero. I think
Yeah.
it was like 88.
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, it was a great
Serious movie, man.
Yeah. But the music to that was the first time like I heard like a unique take, like that wasn't the standard big sweeping orchestral of John Williams, which
Right.
is phenomenal, which I love.
Yeah.
But like that's the first time it spoke to me in like a modern way. Like here's someone doing something a little like different, and that was the first time I was like, oh, I think I can relate to that, and I think I could do that. you
Right.
know?
Right.
So that was a big light bulb moment for me.
That's a great movie.
I've watched it a zillion times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a
It's
big
depressing,
music,
sad movie, but
yeah, there was a big music moment in that when they're sitting in the car, right? And like, is
when
it with
he
the
died?
top down? Is it when he died? No.
Yeah.
I thought they're outside.
well, there are a
and,
few in the car.
and like it's at night. There's something like whizzes by the car. Something happens outside. I can't remember. It's
Yeah,
cool.
well, it's a great soundtrack album too.
Yeah.
Rick
Oh,
Rubin
yeah.
produced it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was awesome. Like,
Right.
There's some great songs on there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was an eye opener for me. You
Yeah.
know, like that you can do like there's other ways to do it than just traditional.
Right.
Even though I love traditional.
Yeah.
I mean, I love using orchestra and all.
Who's your guy or gal?
My number one?
Yeah.
Oh, gee, that's tough. I mean, Danny Elfman, surely. I mean, Edward Scissorhands is one of the masterpieces. I'm a big Jerry Goldsmith fan.
Mhm.
I'm a big Ennio Morricone fan. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, John Williams, obviously.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, sure, Thomas Newman. Yeah, probably those ones.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good crop
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah, I don't know if I have
pulling
a
from.
favorite one, but I actually, I mean, for me too, probably James Horner was the sound of big sweeping movies. You know,
Yeah.
And he was probably him and Thomas Newman were like when you get rid of the Jerry Goldsmiths and all the gold standard people, I feel like probably Thomas Newman and him were the ones that really. You know, I mean, so many movies through the 90s were James
Right.
Horner. And,
Yeah.
You know, and he was amazing because he started on like Roger Corman movies. And I don't know, like just some of his things are just sounds like movies to
Yeah.
me. You know?
Yeah.
And it
Totally.
just- and I think like his gift was getting to the emotion of a movie, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
I just, his stuff spoke to me a lot. So he passed away a few years ago. It was really sad.
So let's go back to you came out rock and roller when we met, right? When we met, you were sort of transitioning out of that. So, but prior to that, you came out being a band.
Yeah.
You guys had a deal, I think, right?
No,
Isn't that sort of what brought you out here?
No, well, yeah. So we had a band. No, we were trying to get signed. We were touring a lot. Out of DC.
As Daisy Hayes?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, prior to that, to my growing up, I did classical piano for years and years and years.
Right.
So like I had that background a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you know, 90s, I was just trying to get signed in an indie rock band and releasing CDs, and we're always like one step away, you know.
Yeah.
And then we moved here, and I kind of went my own way. You know, Pat and those guys went a different way and started their thing. I did a bunch of auditions with Barry Squire as a you know hired gun guitarist.
Yeah.
And I ended up hooking up with this band called Alien Crime Syndicate. And
Right.
They had a deal on V2.
Uh-huh.
And so I was, you know, touring guitarist for them for a while.
What years was this now?
This was like early 2000s, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. a little bit, and then they ended up moving. And I remember we played North by Northwest up in Portland. Yeah, it's all a blur.
Yeah.
Some of that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because it was weird. It was weird being a hired gun guitarist, you know?
Sure.
Because it was fun playing shows and stuff and not having to worry about that part of it. And, you know, it was cool. But eventually it just wasn't for me because, like, you're pretty much just a trained monkey and there's not much room for improvisation, you know?
Right.
So, and it just wasn't my thing, you know? It was Joe's thing. Joe's a super talented dude and the singer Joe Reinecke and songwriter and producer and everything. So he didn't need any creative input from me. You know
just
what I mean?
play the parts.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff was amazing. And he just needed 4 hands and he wouldn't need me. So. But it was a fun experience. But I think that was, for me, the beginning of the end where I was like, yeah, I got to figure out. Because I was always kind of the mad scientist in the band who would be sitting with the guitar and the keyboard and trying to come up with the parts. You know, that was always my thing, coming up with parts. You know?
Yeah.
And the thing I liked about that, because I didn't have a voice, so I wasn't a great songwriter in the classic sense. Because I think it's hard to write words when you don't sing very well.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's hard to write words and ask someone else to sing them. You know.
Yeah.
So I always enjoyed being the guy who would come up with the stuff around all that. You know.
And so, but East Coast guy. Pennsylvania guy, right?
Grew up in Pennsylvania.
Right. And then
moved to DC.
Moved to DC. And then you're out
here.
You're in LA.
Yeah.
You're in Hollywood doing that thing. I mean, it must have felt for a while, it must have felt pretty cool of like, hey, we're going to come out and try and make it. And then you're doing the hired gun gig. But then as you start realizing, well, this isn't so cool. Now you're here.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, well, it was tough because I was here and didn't know anyone, you know?
Right.
Like those guys went that way. And I was kind of like, oh shit, like after the dust settled, I was like all by myself. Like I didn't know anyone here. And I was like, God, how am I going to get a life going? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just decided that through John Houlihan, our manager, he was supervising on some films at that point. And
so Houlihan was the Alien Crime Syndicate manager? No,
he was Daisy Hayes' manager.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But he kind of lit the fire in me about like movie music and stuff like that because he kind of exposed me to some of that. And then when they were at Soundtrack Music Associates, once we got here, when he was a partner and a music supervisor, I got a meeting in there with John Tempero, who is a composer agent there, and he kind of just gave me some advice on how it worked and how you get started and blah, blah, blah. So I signed up at UCLA for some classes on like orchestration and conducting and stuff like that. And then I met a couple composers through that they kind of gave me a gig. I worked for this guy, Chris Ting, on this show, Futurama, as an assistant for a little bit. And I was like, you know, cleaning toilets at 4 a.m. It was rough. I mean, 'cause I was like, you know, I was like almost 30 years old, I think. And I was like making $8 an hour cleaning toilets. Like it was a humbling experience. And just, you know, not knowing what the hell life was, you know, where this was all going to go. Right. And for him, especially, like, I remember a moment where I'd like be, you know, and I in his defense, I wasn't very good back then, you know, because
cleaning toilets.
No, like trying to do my own music and trying to figure this out, you know, like when you start, it's like you're just not that good. You just got to do it. And I handed him a demo for one thing, and I just remember him saying like, you know, I think you might want to find something else to do, like something to that effect. Like you're not that good, you know. And that was like, wow, can I get any lower at this? But it like lit a fire for some reason, you know. Because I was like, I might not be great, but I think I could. I know I can do this. And it's funny, when I got CSI Miami a few years later, I was pulling into the lot down at Raleigh Studios, and he was walking out, and I could tell he was pissed because he wanted to get that gig, and he's like, "How the fuck did you get that?" You know, he's like, good. So that felt good.
Yeah. Did you see him?
Yeah, I saw him.
Said hello and stuff?
I was pulling in. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "I got a spotting session on this show I got," and he's like, "What?" So that felt good. I mean, he's a good guy, but like just lit a fire. You know,
Sure.
you know, whatever.
So he lit a fire. So what did you do? Do you remember, like, okay, I got to work on this, or I got to?
It was just
pay more attention to this.
it was just like, I have to write music every day, you know, because like when you start, like, okay, like I want to be a composer. Like if you want to be in a band, you make demos, right? You know,
right.
But it's like, if you're a composer, it's like, you just have to write music, you know? And I didn't realize, I was so worried about like trying to find a job or something, that I realized that I wasn't writing music every day.
Yeah.
So I just made a pact to like, I'm going to write a cue every day. And because just to get better at it, you know?
Right.
Because like, especially when you're starting as a composer, it's like, you're also, just by necessity, you're an engineer and you're a mixer and you're a producer. You have to do all that because you don't have any money to do anything else, right? You know, and so it's like, not only you have to like come up with the music, but you got to play everything, record it, and somehow make it sound good enough that someone's going to be like, "Oh yeah, that sounds good."
Right.
So I just really started woodshedding and trying to make as much.
You think that's where the piece we were talking about earlier, in terms of like, go with your first instinct, get it out, and just follow that rabbit hole? Do you think that's where some of that came from?
Yeah, because you're just, especially because if you're not working on something, you're just like making music that's you. And like, you know, some of my first things, I'm like, I'm going to be a composer. So I made all this shitty music that sounded like bad John Williams, because that's what composers are supposed to sound like, right? And it sounded so, because that's like, nobody wants a shitty John Williams, you know, like they want, you know, if someone's considering him, they're not going to go, it's either him or the really shitty version of, you know what I mean? So it's like, eventually you start realizing like what you do better and what you don't. And so like, I think by just making music like that in a bubble, you kind of inadvertently are like doing you. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Right. And that's like, honestly, like one of the only times as a composer where you're just doing you, because it's like, once you start working on something, then you're like doing you, trying to solve this problem, you know, score this film. Right. But so in that period there, I was just making music that I liked. And that's kind of where you come up with your identity a little bit. Yep. And so then also at that time, I also met up with this other composer who's turned out to be like a good friend and a mentor. This guy, John Murphy, he did like 28 Days Later. And so we kind of hit it off. And I helped him on a few things back. He had this movie called a Guy Ritchie movie. I think it was a Guy Ritchie movie called Mean Machine. And there's a movie called Millions. That was a Danny Boyle movie. And I kind of just was kind of a fly on the wall for him. And I helped him with some bits, but just seeing how he did his own way, I was like, I could do this, because John he's a rock and roller. He wasn't like, you know, because there's a lot of very like trained scholarly
more
type composers.
Type.
Yeah, and John was he was a hip dude from Liverpool, you know, who just was faking it on a different level, you know. So, and
a more relatable level to you.
Yeah. So I kind of understood what he was doing. So that period there was good for me. It's kind of being able to see how some other people were doing it, and figure out what the hell I was doing.
And where did you start finding your stride before the one that you were like, that put me on the map?
Well, I would like, in those days it was before the internet wasn't, well, it was early 2000s, but there'd be this thing called Production Weekly that would come out every week, right? Yeah. So I'd buy that, and or Hollywood Reporter every Tuesday, they'd have like the listings of movies and stuff that were in production. So I would literally go through, and any movie that had an actor that you knew their name, I would skip over that because it was too big. And I would try to find all the independent movies, and I would email, or I would send a demo and a CD and just mass mail all these things. I'd go to AFI and put flyers up on the wall.
Oh,
I actually ended up doing a couple of short films that way and stuff. Just trying to like meet people, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And I don't know if that necessarily turned into anything. I did a few things, but like,
it helped get your chops is what it does. Right.
Yeah. And once like you either sit home and hope that someone's going to come knock at your door and, or you got to be proactive, even if it doesn't lead to anything.
Right.
So while I was doing that, I got a little movie, my first movie. So it was called, I think it was like right after I did your short film or somewhere around there. We knew this manager, her name is Deborah Baum, and we had some mutual friends. And so she was doing this, they were doing this remake of Where the Red Fern Grows with Dave Matthews was in this movie. It was like a kid's book. And so she got me a meeting on this, and I got in this meeting, and somehow she must have, I don't know what she told him about me, because I literally, I didn't have any calling cards to go on, you know what I mean? Like I was like pretty new. I had done a couple like little documentaries and stuff, but like, and so, but somehow I got in the meeting and they're like, yeah, it's a bluegrass score. I'm like, yeah, I love bluegrass. And I didn't know what bluegrass was. So, I mean, with their reason. So I got out of the meeting. I'm like, yeah, I'm your guy. Love. So on the way back from the meeting, I went to McCabe's in Santa Monica and bought a dobro. And I hacked out a demo with I didn't even know how to play slide, but I was trying to figure it out.
Oh my God, that's
and
awesome.
I got hired on that. That was like my first like pseudo real movie. And it was just faking it till you make it on that thing. Cause it was a lot of bluegrass, but then there's a lot of like big orchestral stuff. And I was just like, sure. And,
late nights tearing your hair.
Yeah. And I had this violin player, who played in the bedroom record. This woman, Daphne Chen, who's amazing. Thank God she played on it for me. And she plays in this group called The Section now. They do they play at Largo all the time. But so she played violin and somehow, made my terrible chicken scratch that I asked her to play. She like interpreted it. It made it sound good. And I had this flute player, Katis, and then I had this bluegrass band that I hired to eventually play some of this stuff, and somehow it came together, and I made it to the end. I mean, it was scary, and it was. And in fact, there was one point after we had finished and we mixed it, like we were on the dub, and I mixed it myself because I didn't know any. I was just clueless, you know. Like I was like, "Oh, you're supposed to hire someone to do this." I just did it myself, and they got at the dub, and they're like, "It's really reverby," and I was like, yeah, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, like, that's what I'm going for.
He's like, if it was any more, it would be unusable. But like, so like, I was so nervous. Like we made it to the end, and they seemed relatively happy. But like, it took a while. Those days it was harder to get a movie released. And so it ended up getting bought by Disney straight to DVD. But I remember getting a call at one point from the director, and I thought they were going to toss the score when Disney bought it, because I thought he said something, and I was like, oh no, like, but it ended up sticking, and so I had my first like credit, whatever.
Right.
So, but then that didn't really lead to anything. So I was hurting for cash at that point, and time was running out, and so we moved out of that house, the haunted house, and we moved into a hotel by the airport, like a flop house hotel by the airport. And I was like, I was down to like my last, like maybe a month, where if something didn't happen,
it's job time.
It was, we're going to have to leave. So anyway, so we're living at this stripper hotel by the airport, and my friend, music supervisor, Jason Alexander. Okay. The one who ended up coming back on Silicon Valley many, many years later. But anyway, so he was just getting started as a supervisor. They had an office in Santa Monica on 14th Street. He's like, there's a studio that opened next door. You should come work out of this studio. And I was like, I mean, I broke.
Right.
But so I was like, fuck it. I got a cash advance. Can you curse on this thing?
You can absolutely fucking curse on this.
So I got a cash advance on a credit card. You know, you used to get those things in the mail.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I like cash advanced, and I think I bought into this studio for, I forget how many months. I think 4 months or something. And so like after being in there for a little bit, Jason at that point started working on CSI. The original CSI had just started. And he was a music supervisor. He, as his friend from England, Danny Cannon, was a producer, directed it, hired Jason. And Jason was as new as I was at that point, you know?
Wow.
So he got hired.
That's a big show, even right off the bat. It was a big show.
Yeah. So he ended up doing that. And then they did Miami, the spinoff.
Yeah.
And so he was doing that. And so that's when I moved into the studio. So then probably like a month after I started there, Danny came over one day and said, the cameraman on CSI is doing a short film. Would you score it? Or something like that. Somehow I ended up scoring the short film, and I did it, and I didn't think anything of it, but it turned out okay. You know, it seemed fine. I think Danny thought it was cool, and I didn't really think anything of it. So then, I guess a month later, Jason comes in on a Friday night and said, they just fired the guy on CSI Miami. Do you want to do a demo? And it was Graham Revell, who's like A-list, The Crow, like big film guy. I'm like, they're not going to go from fucking Graham to nobody. Yeah.
Right. To the airport guy.
But yeah. But anyway, so I got to demo. They sent a VHS back in those days, and I got the weekend, and I did a whole episode. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I somehow did the whole episode. And somehow they watched the tapes without names on them, which has never happened.
What do you mean without names?
I didn't know it was me, or they just did it blind.
Like a blind taste
test.
Yeah,
which never, ever, ever happens. And somehow they picked me. And I'm sure then Danny kind of vouched for me at that point, and somehow. So I went back to the stripper hotel after I turned in that VHS, and I'm sitting, and there's a Denny's parking lot in the front of the stripper hotel. So I'm sitting in the Denny's parking lot, we were down to a few $100 in the bank at that point, and I got the call that I got the job. And there's I won't bore you with the whole. There's more drama that happened, but
sure. Did you have an agent and stuff at the time? Is
no,
anyone negotiating it?
No.
Nothing. No.
No. Well, once I
that
got
rate sounds good. $50 a week.
No. When I got the gig, I got an agent. If you have a gig in hand, then any agent in town will take you.
Yeah,
so I went around and I ended up getting an agent, but it was just it was just one of those Hollywood moments that's so rare, you know. And it was the greatest thing was I'm we're going to Starbucks, to be able to go into Starbucks and not stress that you didn't have enough money to buy.
Yeah, man.
It's I hit the lottery, man. But
holy shit!
So that was pretty cool. I mean, that was from the brink of I don't know what. And so
Do you remember sitting that weekend prior to this call and scoring that VHS tape and just all right, I'm going to go for it. I mean, you had was the show starting from scratch?
No, this was after they did one season, so this was the beginning of the second season.
So you had a template at least, or was it just?
But again, I just did my own thing because I was if you give them what they had already,
right?
They're obviously not happy with what they had, so I was
sure.
I just did whatever I thought it should be, within reason. You know, I mean, I cringed to go back and listen to what that tape was because it was probably terrible, but there's so much rejection in this for all of us, you know, but sometimes you get lucky, you know?
Yeah.
So it's
that ended up being what, 3 years?
10 years. What are you talking
Was
about?
that 10 years on
that?
Yeah.
I went for 10 seasons. I mean, that was a life changer for me.
Jesus.
You know,
dude.
because to get paid for that changed everything.
Right. So that was the turning point.
That for me, that was the big. I mean, the Red Fern movie was my first real feature, but
that was sort of the break in. But this was the big you're now a player.
Well, within reason, I'm in the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was cool because like back then there was no streaming. Like there weren't as many
Right.
outlets, and this show was getting
That was a big show.
20. It was like #1 in the world for a while, so that
Yeah.
was a trip. You know, it's weird. Like it was cool. Like, yeah, it was the #1 in the world, but like it was never like critically low. So it was great financially. It was
Sure.
great stability wise, but
Right.
but it's not like, you know, now all I crave is to do some hip
Right.
indie drama thing that
Right.
everyone loves because it's critically acclaimed. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But
yeah,
like,
yeah.
at that point, it was pretty great.
Yeah,
and it
absolutely.
changed my life. And I mean, I'm thankful for every second.
Yeah.
of it, you know?
Yeah. And you ultimately got that with Silicon, right?
Yeah. Different way. Yeah.
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 But it was
What's your go-to instrument? You sit down, you look at something, you know, you've got a screen up right now, a beautiful woman on the screen. I don't know what's going on here with this thing, right? But like your go-to thing, like you
it's
start playing with the
weird.
keyboard, or is it like I'm going to grab that funky looking
Usually
guitar?
keyboard. I mean, honestly, these days I'll just use a sine wave, like a Wurlitzer. Just something that's really neutral,
Yeah.
like so you can kind of come up with some musical ideas without being too influenced by the sound.
Okay.
You know, because if you play piano, you do things that sound piano-y, you know,
Right,
and same with
right.
guitar. So sometimes I'll just try to like sketch something out with like just the most neutral sound ever.
Wow.
So yeah, so a lot of times I'll use just a sine wave,
Okay.
it sounds kind of like a Rhodes piano or something, but just
Right.
really very neutral.
Right.
So you can kind of think about the music a little bit before you start putting all the stuff on it to make it sound like
Yeah.
whatever it's going to sound like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you? I think you mentioned before, like minimal emotional.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm very, yeah.
What's the point where do you layer shit up and then start? No, I'm going to pull that back and pull that back, or is it like you sort of?
I kind of go the other
instinctually
way.
know, like,
I go the other way, but like I think when you're starting, like you just want to layer all this crap on and make everything as thick, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, what does this scene need? What's the simplest way I can do this? You know? And now I could do like 2 instruments and be like, that's all it needs, and be done. Where in the past you would just, because you know we have access to all these sounds, and you just
Right.
want to do everything. But
Right.
like I think sometimes it's overkill. It's like when some bands had a hit with their first album, and then they take 3 years and they have strings and everything on the second album, and it gets overblown. You know what I mean? It's like
totally.
And I think you can lose sight of what the essence of what you're trying to do, you know? So I
Right.
try not to get caught up in, you know, especially with these days with what we do, like there's so many like samples and sound libraries and all this crap that comes out. And I literally just ignore most of it because it's like, it's all just the same, and it all just
Right.
makes it too easy to just push one button for it to sound kind of good. But like, I just don't I'm not a big gearhead. I know I can't say that on this on your show, but I'm not that much of a gearhead though. Like I try to just do more with what you have. You know? I use guitar and loopers and bowed guitar. I try to get a lot of sounds out of things organic, you know? Instead of buying some prepackaged thing.
Right. That is a thing. That's you and Nate Barr have that in common, right? You try to use more natural instruments.
Yeah, I like acoustic instruments. I mean, that's definitely my thing. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
really much of a synth guy. I'd rather use bowed. Yeah, Nate's a cello player, so he uses cello a lot. But yeah, I'd rather use like a bowed guitar or.
Do you go direct with those things, or do you go with the 87 there? Or what do you do?
I use mostly live amp for the guitars. Piano, probably half real piano, half fake, because it's so hard getting the piano to stay in tune.
Right.
You know.
Right. And it ain't cheap getting someone to come in.
Yeah, I mean, it's
right?
literally
the
a
whole
week
thing.
later. It's like, and then it sounds like a upright piano. It's like I got a Steinway, and it sounds like worse than so.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
Yeah. What's your? Well, we did the go-to.
Oh, sounds.
Yeah, did the go-to sound. What's your favorite thing in the studio? Tell me about the studio. Let's just do that. We got a little control room.
Yeah,
we're in the back of your house.
Abode. Yeah,
it's pretty sweet.
We got like a.
You got some BX5As, right? Are those the BX5A? Those monitors.
15. Oh, those aren't on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just use the Dyne Audios. What are those? 15 BM15, I think they're the old ones.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah. Didn't
Yeah.
you have some? Didn't you have the classic NX10s?
No,
No.
they will rip your head off.
You didn't
Yeah,
have-
I don't like them. No.
You didn't have those little
No,
guys?
I don't know many composers who use them.
No.
I know one guy, and it's just like the high end. It's just like sitting there listening to them all day. I mean,
Yeah.
you're deaf, you know.
Right.
They're super bright.
Right.
So yeah, no, I use these Dyne Audios. I have these M Audios just as like a reference one because like
Yeah.
pretty much every editing room has those in it. So.
Right. That's what I have.
Oh, do you? They're
Yeah.
great. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, for the price, they're friggin' amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really are. And
Yeah.
every edit bay has them.
Right. Right.
So it's like I hear stuff,
I
and
think they're like $200, right, or
Yeah.
less. I mean, they're
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
but like I go into an edit room and you hear something on there that sounds freaking good. So
Yeah.
it's not the speakers if it doesn't sound good. It's
Right.
you know, it's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So I know it's possible to sound really good on those shitty $200
Right.
speakers.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. And then through preamps.
Yeah, I mean, I have like 16 preamps, I think.
Yeah.
I just like everything to be mic'd up, and I never touch them.
Right.
Yeah, the piano is always mic'd, the drums are always mic'd, the guitar is always mic'd, everything's. So I just have the input set, and I just
Right.
hit record.
So it's just ready to go.
Yeah,
Right.
for me, that's the biggest thing is just being able to start.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that I use Logic. I mean, a lot of guys use Pro Tools, but like
Yeah.
for me, Logic is just like creative. You know, you look
Right.
at it, just like you just look at it and you just know that sounds are just coming out.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like it's the quickest way of getting what I'm hearing in my head coming out.
Yeah.
You know, or if I look at Pro Tools, it looks like a tape machine that needs, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not creative to me. I mean, it's
Right.
amazing and we
Right.
deliver on it and stuff. But
Sure.
so, yeah.
Do you do a lot of collab with people? Like, maybe I'll write a little melody and have someone come and sing or whatever, get a voice on it.
I mean, it depends on the show. Yeah, I mean, I try to use live people as much as I can, you know.
Yeah.
It depends on the show. Silicon Valley was pretty electronic, so that was pretty much me.
Yeah.
I got this show called The Kominsky Method on Netflix now that I
Yeah.
use some live people. I use cello, I use bassoon, upright bass, and accordion. So, yeah, it really depends.
And you write charts for them.
Yeah.
And they come in and
Yeah.
yeah.
We just did a movie where we did strings in Budapest. Yeah, I mean, I love using live orchestra. That's
yeah.
the jam. That's the
yeah,
best thing
man.
ever.
I bet that is amazing.
Yeah.
It's got to be just killer to go in and like hear your thing.
It's the most
Come to
powerful
life.
thing. Well, so back to like when I got CSI Miami, then like 2 years later, I got my first studio film, which just seemed like the most unattainable goal. But so Patrick Houlihan was the music supervisor,
Right.
on some movie called Just Friends, and it was
Yeah.
for New Line. And it was like, to me, that was like I could die the next day.
Yeah.
You know, like I got that. I don't know how I got that, man. Like we just get lucky sometimes. You
Right.
know?
Right.
I had a good meeting. I don't know.
Right.
So I got it, and it was a miracle. But like, that was like the first one with, we had like an 80-piece orchestra. That was, and so we did up in Seattle, and there was a moment when we got up there, and Pat's like, we're standing in front of you record in this church up there. It's called the Bastille, and we're standing outside. We're like, this is either gonna be the greatest day of our lives, or we're gonna be found out and it's all over. We're going down in flames.
Yeah.
Because like you walk into this room and you see, it's easy to say, oh, we have 80 people, like. But when you walk into a room and you see 80 people, it's like, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. And they're all looking at you like,
yeah, like you know what you're doing.
What do
yeah,
you got?
And it was the most terrifying and but then they played the first cue and it was the greatest moment of my life because it sounded good. And Roger, the director, was like, how the hell do you know what you're doing? I was like,
don't know. You should
I didn't
hear
know
my,
till 5
you should
minutes
hear my
ago.
dobro playing.
So that was awesome. And so Pat, that was like, we got to enjoy a little victory. That was good. And that was amazing.
Yeah.
And that was the crazy thing about that movie for me too, was that like, again, I think just ignorance and not being naive sometimes works out in your favor. Cause I don't know how you start a big studio film, I didn't know what you do, but like, I was so excited the night I got it that I was lying in bed and I woke up at like 4 a.m. and I heard this tune in my head and I got out at the piano and I just recorded this like waltz thing. and I recorded on my phone, or no, it wasn't even a phone back then. It was like I forget. I think I had my laptop and I put a speaker and it like note for note was the theme of the movie. Like, and it was this waltzing. It was nothing like what was in the temp score, and we just got lucky. Wow. And it was like, it didn't change through the whole movie. It was like,
do you get a lot of those? Was that the only time that a tune came to you
in that way?
In that way. And
I can't remember. Well, there's been a few others, but that was
shower, like in those sort of off times.
Well, yeah, sometimes like the problem is like, if you get hired on something, the best thing is like, you can watch the movie and then just like have a few weeks to like not start.
Right.
Like the worst thing is like if you have to start super fast, because like I find like you watch a movie, you kind of have it kicking around in your head, like and you kind of come up with what you think it's going to be,
right?
And like so, there've been a few in the last few years where it's like I heard the tune, like I knew what it was going to be, and you had time like to write it down or to do. I do demos on my iPhone. I'll just sit at the piano and I have like hundreds of. But like a lot of times it's like that's what it's going to be, and it'll stick. Like by the time you actually start working on the movie, it's easy because you have it. It's in there. Like, but like if you start, like if you're in a hurry and you start working, but you don't really know what the music is yet. You're just like you're doing music to cover these scenes, but you don't really know what the concept is. Right. So that's harder.
Do you fall back on ever? Like you just said, you've got 100 whatever songs in there, demos that things you come out with.
Right.
If you get stuck and in the moment you can't. Yeah. Do you ever go back? I mean, you must have a fucking library of shit
I don't really
didn't
listen
work
to them that
for
much.
shows. You don't. You just. But get them
no,
out.
like there was a Netflix show I was up for last year that I did this demo for. It's a picture, and I came really close, but I didn't get it. So then I was doing a movie last summer. And I was like, that tune seems like it would work. And I literally, the director was here, and I put up that demo, the picture, and he's like, that's the movie. And that stuck. That was a whole movie. That became the tune. So sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. How have you seen... I mean, you and I are the same age, right? So we came up around the same time, that pre-digital analog thing into digital, now into streaming.
Yeah.
So how have you seen some of that change for you and what you do? And maybe it hasn't.
It's changed the business a lot. Like I always wanted to be a film composer. That's all I wanted to do is film. So like TV was like a weird sidetrack. But films have really changed a lot in the last... because there used to be a lot of like studio films that were like the mid-budget, like Just Friends was, I think like a, $15 million, like they made a lot of movies like that, and so it was easier. There was like that middle ground. Yeah. But what's happened in the last, and it sucks for me because that was kind of the movies that I was getting hired on, was like there's less of them and there's less comedies. Studio comedies being made. Right. So it's like there's, because they want to do
tentpole.
Iron. Yeah, they want to do a tentpole because you can make way more money. You can make 50 little ones and have a bunch of singles, or you can make a sure thing. Yeah. And especially because the international box office is such a big thing. Like it didn't used to be. That was like
shit, right.
Yeah, and now that's like the whole thing. So like studio, I say, studio films, it's hard, it's not, just when I started kind of getting a foothold and getting some of them, then it changed and it's become a lot harder,
Yeah. But you have these streaming companies.
Yeah. So it's changed in that way. And some of the genres that weren't getting theatrical releases are now, you're coming out on streaming.
But they've got the money to do, some of the shows on Netflix and whatnot are like, that might as well be.
Oh yeah, they have huge budgets. Yeah, it depends.
Right.
It depends. Yeah, a lot of the big name producers, they'll open the checkbook and write whatever they want, but they're also doing. Some of their stuff is different.
Yeah,
it doesn't pay as much. It's all kind of in flux now. And before it was like if a movie wasn't theatrical, it would be straight to DVD. and they would usually not be as of good quality, you know.
Right.
I've done 46 movies at this point. I've done my share of straight to DVD, but now there's a lot of movies that are pretty good, but just because of the economics, it just doesn't make sense to release it theatrically.
Yeah.
So, you know, you'll get these limited theatrical release, you know, 10 to 50 city kind of things, and then it'll go on VOD. And it's not because the movies are bad. It's just because the economics of how it used to be don't make sense.
Right.
So it's just a weird place to be, you know. It's hard to break out of that.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's kind of, for better or worse, that's kind of where I've been stuck in some of these films. You know, like every few years I'll get a big wide release one, but then I'll have to do 10 indies with day and date, and you just don't know it's the Wild West. You just lottery tickets.
Right.
And it's fine because the process is the same, you know. It's still creatively fulfilling, you know, as long as there's money to be able to do it right, you know.
Yeah.
But
do you like films more in general or television more in general? The you know, the process and
I like the process of film because I feel like you're making this body of work. You're making this 40 to 60 minutes of music that's all related, you know. Every cue is it's cut from the same cloth, you know. It's all part of a story. And I like when you get done, you go into iTunes and you hear it, because I don't have ghostwriters. I don't have people who, so, you know, I've written every note and it feels good. It's like, feels like here it's finite. It's start to finish. It's a work, and I like that you finish that work and then you go on to another one, you know, where TV is different, you know, like it's not as linear. It's more, depending on what kind of show it is, but some of it's just like, we have a bunch of cues in this one and the other ones, and they're not necessarily, there's not necessarily an arc to a sitcom. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you go back ever and watch something or listen to something?
Sometimes.
You know, an old series or, you know, something. And
yeah,
like,
I mean, I don't go search it out, but like sometimes you'll be happily surprised. You'll see something come on and you'll be like, oh, that sounded pretty good, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I found I used to mix my own stuff, and anything that I mixed, I cringe. But I have a guy, I have mixers. All the movies I've had people mix, but not on TV, that I have a guy who mixes too. And it makes such a difference for me to be able to listen to it again. Yeah.
Do you give them an idea, like try not to do this or do that, or, you know, go this, or just like they just know you know them, boom? Yeah,
I just give them a rough mix of where it was when it left here, you know. So, but you know, by that point, it's pretty close to where I mean, depending on, again, if it's like a super sound designy thing, then they'll probably listen to my demo a little bit more. If it's orchestral, you know, they know how to make the orchestra sound good, and then but it always sounds better. So I like that. I like it. That's the only way I can listen to anything I've done is if I didn't mix it.
Right.
Unfortunately, I mixed roadies.
And look where that got us. Yeah. Dude, Jeff, this has been awesome. I could keep grilling you on this, but I know you got to get back to work, man. So I'm going to leave it on this. This is how I like to try to wrap these things up.
Yeah.
If you had a special time machine, right, and you could go back to a moment, I'm going to pick the moment for you. If you could go back to the Denny's parking lot, right now, and you could sit next to you in that car when you got your phone call by the stripper motel,
which is knocked down right now. It's a vacant lot.
Really?
Drove past, yeah.
Oh man. Well, you know, it's funny. I was going to ask you, have you ever driven by that spot? Because I have spots in LA.
Oh yeah.
Right. That I'm like, fuck. I remember.
So many places. Yeah. I miss when you'd like look at something in LA and it would make you feel a certain way, you know?
Yeah.
Because they're tearing everything down.
Right. Exactly.
But anyway, okay.
No. It's just to go in that small little tangent. There's all those quote unquote yous out there of different parts, you know, in your life when you struggled out here and everything. Yeah. And I don't mean you. I mean whoever led a creative life out
That's
here.
That's this place.
Right?
It's like it's a place you come to like find your dreams, you know, and it's like. It's never, well, for most people, I don't know. most people, it's a winding path, and it's random, and it's not the same for everyone. And
it's funny. Before I actually get to the final thing, because now I'm out here it's been a couple days, and I'm like, again, cruising around in a lift and like seeing these places and talking to the lift drivers or whoever it is, or a waiter here and there, and it's like the struggle still continues, right? Like the tradition. And the lineage of coming out and trying to find your dream. And now they don't necessarily wait tables. They drive a Lyft or an Uber, which is like a whole other fucking thing. But it's the same story. It's literally like the same fucking story, like, man, I'm going to do this. I got my side hustle and I got to get that part, and you're like, God almighty, man, I had the same script. Had the same damn script. And what I kind of want to say to people in that instance is like, because you can hear the desperation. We've all been there, right? Yeah. Is like, you've got to almost find weird solace and comfort in the fact that you are part of a tradition. Right?
Yeah.
Of like,
that's what I love about here though. Like
right?
everyone's trying to be the better version of themselves. They're trying to go for that. They're not settling, and even though it's not going to work out for everyone, but still, like, I admire everyone giving it a shot, not playing it. People don't come here to play it safe, they come here to like.
And even if they do make it, the other thing that I find, the next chapter is the reinvention, of themselves, right? Like, you see it with celebrities a lot that they like. They were doing this, and then they shed that skin. Now they're this guy or gal.
That's the truth. Like, you never. I mean, I've realized that you never get somewhere where you're like, oh, I've made it. I'm here. It's like there's always something else you want, and you get one thing, and it's like something. You know what I mean? It's like
oh yeah.
It's just with music in itself. Like it's never like I know music now. It's like you learn something every day. It's like it's like a lifelong, and it's friggin' awesome. It's just the constant reinvention and. Because if you just look at the past, if you just think that this is the way it's going to be forever, you're dead. Because nothing ever is.
Right. So okay, man, you get to travel back. You get a free pass to travel back, and you get to sit next to the younger you in the Denny's, and you've just gotten the call.
Yeah,
and it's going to be okay. Well, you don't know what it's going to be, right? You don't know.
For that week, it was okay. Yeah,
for that week. So. What do you say to your younger self?
I'd say enjoy the ride because you never know. You know what I mean? Like I wish I can go back and have enjoyed some of the smaller victories, because you get so with age, like when you're young, you have this thing you want to get to.
Right.
And all you're thinking about is that thing you want to get to. And by doing that, I think along the way, you miss a lot of the cool things that you get to on the way. And I wish I could tell a younger self to have enjoyed that a little bit more.
Right.
Because this is so fucking cliche, but it's like, it's the journey, not the destination,
Yeah.
And that's.
But you don't know
life.
That until you're us now, this age, I think, right? I mean.
Yeah, well, it's like, even now, like I realize like there's certain things that I want and I thought I was going to get, but they might not. And I realized that like, you got to find the small victories because I don't want to be on my deathbed realizing, God, I wasted a lot of like pretty good years because I was just pissed off I didn't get this one movie or this one thing because nobody's going to care. No one cares like this.
Right.
No one's going to care. And my dad passed away a few years ago and I did his eulogy. And I was just sitting there at the end. I was like, no one cared what he did with it, what his job was, how much money he had, what kind of car he drove. No one, none of this stuff matters at the end, And I think the older you get, you realize that it's the people, it's the experience, that's what really matters,
Right.
And I think I have spent so much wasted energy like wanting to be validated for this from other people and it's like that's so stupid. It's such a vain thing to waste any time worrying about because it's not going to change anything. Like the validation has to come from within and it has to come with you just being like I just did this movie. I did a really good job. I came up with something cool. I'm proud of it. The rest of it doesn't fucking matter. You know, if it goes to Sundance, great. If it goes and no one ever sees it, it still doesn't change that you're proud of what you did.
Right.
And I think the me now would tell the me sitting in the Denny's parking lot to like appreciate those moments when they happen. Because that's what life's about, you know,
right.
Whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking, it reminds me when we got married, when Amanda and I got married, someone was like, you've got to take a moment, take 5 minutes, the two of you, and walk out of the tent, right? And like get some distance away and just stand back and watch everybody, you know, just to get out of it and look back and watch it and just appreciate it for what it is for those 5 minutes, because that night's going to go quick. 10 years is going to go quick. Yep. 20 years is going to go quick. Right. This and you're like, thing, oh shit.
And you gotta appreciate the moments. I would also tell the old me that getting married by Elvis in Vegas is probably not a smart move. You can chop that out.
Oh no, we're leaving that in. And on that note, this is a wrap. Jeff Rowe, I thank you, awesome. Man.
Thanks, man.
You got it. All right, there it is. There you have it. There it was, my friends. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it, pal. Guys, stay tuned next week, episode 160 with Miss Tana Douglas, the first female roadie. That's right. You heard me correctly. The first female roadie. During the week, you can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify, all as Roadie Free Radio. Check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com. And my friends, send me a note, because you know I want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. And in the meantime, y'all, be safe out there. No roadies, no rock and roll.